Welcome to This Got Me Thinking, where clarity comes from conversations and the ideas that spark from it. I am your host, Chris LaFay, and today I have the pleasure of chatting with Rachael Edmondson Clark. We all have been through burnout in our lives, right? We sit here, whether it's you're an entrepreneur and you're running a business, whether you're working inside of a business and climbing the corporate ladder and getting promotion after promotion, it's easy to be busy, right? But what happens when your body forces you to stop? That's what happened to Rachael. She has a crazy story about what happened to her as she was working through corporate America and in marketing, and how this one event in her life completely altered her viewpoint on how she defines success. I'll let her take it away.
I'd been working like my whole career to get a particular job. I was, doing the corporate role. I had the glass fronted office. I had the car, the team. I had the influence and the impact over the company strategy and where we were going and what we were doing. And then one day, instead of walking out of my office to go into the boardroom, I found myself lying on the floor, staring up at the ceiling tiles. I couldn't think. I certainly couldn't breathe, and it was freaking scary. I didn't know what was happening to me at the time, but I later realized that what I'd had experienced was a panic attack. And it was the result of not just weeks or months, but actually, in my case, years of working harder and harder, longer and longer hours, disrespecting my body, neglecting my most important relationship in my life. And yeah, it left me feeling pretty guilty, pretty ashamed, and pretty fearful as well. Not just for like my health and what was going on, but kind of fearful in terms of my overall situation, that I wasn't coping somehow as well as I thought I should have been coping.
I've realized recently that with talking to a lot of people and also just being introspective as well, that burnout doesn't happen overnight. And I realize that sounds like a very obvious thing to state, but when you're looking at it from the outside and you see people burn out, it looks like it's one of those like flash in the pan moments. Like you said, you had a panic attack, right? It looks like it all just kind of culminated in one spot. But in reality, nothing in general, nothing changes like that overnight. So I'm curious, what did, looking back on it now, what did that slow build look like for you, that now with hindsight being 2020, you can now see what that incline actually did look like?
Yeah, really great question. And so the kind of very logical answer to this is that 18 months to 2 years earlier, I'd accepted this promotion role, which I was just delighted to do. And at the time, so I was stepping up. It was another level for me. And at the time, I had a little bit of growing to do to meet the role, but not too much. But during the time that I was in the role, the demands of the role and the company situation changed. And basically, although I was getting better all the time, I wasn't keeping up with what was required or needed for the context and the environment of the organization and for the role. But to answer that from a more uh, practical and human level, what did that look like? Um, I would find myself switching the lights on in the office in the morning because I was the first person to arrive, and I would switch them off when I went out in the evening. We all had to swipe in and out with a clocking kind of system. It's something everybody did. It's a manufacturing organization. So we all did that. And you could see on my timesheets that even just, those hours that I was working, and I knew I was doing more when I got home as well. I wasn't eating particularly well. So I can remember looking back now, I would walk around the office shoveling something into my mouth as I walked around to go and see people, or to, like, I wouldn't ever sit down to properly kind of digest a meal. um, and probably the biggest thing was that I delayed our wedding not once, but twice because of work commitments. I know. I honestly, I can't, that there's a part of me that can't believe I'm saying that now, because at the time it felt so like, well, we can't do that this year because there's this happening and there's that happening with work, which sounds crazy to me now. Crazy.
Were you leading from a sense of fear or something else? These are just some thoughts to toss into the mix.
Yeah, there was fear and there was worry that ultimately I wasn't good enough. Maybe I wasn't good enough. And the director had, given me this opportunity, and it was the one that I really, really wanted. And I really loved people and my team, and I cared massively about the business. And I wanted the team and the business to succeed. And I can remember after all of this going to the CEO and apologizing to him, and I think he was really surprised. He was like, what are you apologizing for?" Because I think one of the things that I also realize now is that my reaction to that environment was actually a very normal and natural reaction to that environment. And you could have taken anyone and put them in that kind of environment, and they would have experienced something and felt something probably pretty similar.
Looking back on it now, obviously there were mindset shifts that needed to happen to make that more sustainable. How do you shift that mindset in the midst of all of the facades that are put up?
Well, I think one of the biggest things that I realized I'd been getting wrong had been I'd just been practicing positive mindset. So what I had been doing all of those years was regulating how I was feeling by saying, well, I control how I feel. I get to choose, Tony Robbins, how I move my body, what I choose to focus on, what I say that this situation means. And I'd done that for so long, to such an extent, that I'd forgotten I got some biology in here as well, not just the psychology. But I wasn't looking after that. And so I think that one of the mindset, if we call it a mindset shift, but that, I can remember I remember getting up from the floor, finding my breath eventually, sitting on a seat in that office, and just like it was as if life had just slapped me around the face with a great big wet fish to kind of go, wake up, wake up. You cannot keep doing this. And so shortly after that, like a day or two after, I'd arranged to have a conversation with my director to say, I can't, this, something has to change, because if it doesn't, I'm going to break. And like, that's not, I'm not signed up for that. And what we ultimately ended up doing was restructuring the team and recruiting more experienced talent into the business to take on the role that I had been fulfilling.
How long did it take you to feel like you reached this definition of success? So, burnout, laying on the floor, panic attack, to now, I was gonna say, now that you feel like you figured it all out. That's actually not what I wanted to say, but it's like the phrase that's going through in my head on loop, and it's not it. But where you were able to, like, when you sat down one day and you were like, yes, like, life is never perfect. Life is not, there is no such thing as perfect balance. Nothing is ever 50-50. It's always a seesaw. It's going back and forth, obviously. But how long did it take you to go from drop dead to having that first moment of like, yes, finally?
So it was 2012 when I collapsed. I'm gonna say probably 2018, so 6 years.
Okay. What in general, what were some key pieces over those 6 years that were kind of defining trajectory shifting elements within that?
So if I come back and pick up that part of the story where Um, well, I remember actually I was in the shower one day getting ready for work. So this was after I'd had the conversation with the director about we were going to need to restructure the team, and we were starting to put those things into place. I was in the shower one morning, and it was just like there was a whisper on my heart. And it was like this voice that I think had been there for a really long time, but there was no way that I had dared to listen to that whisper. And in that moment in the shower, I kind of almost remember turning to it and actually going, "What are you saying? What are you trying to tell me?" And it wasn't a super clear answer, but the essence of it was, "You're made for more. You're meant to be doing something different." So I'm like, "What different?" And I knew that it was about making a positive difference in the world. I knew that it was about supporting and helping others, but I didn't actually know what that was going to, like, what form that was going to take. But by the time I'd finished the shower and my feet, like, just stepped onto the bath mat, I had made a decision that I wasn't looking for a job, or even a career, but that I wanted something that felt like it was my life's mission and that I could jump out of bed every morning and feel excited to do. And I am so I'm privileged, and I'm so fortunate that pretty much every day I am getting up and I'm feeling those things about the people I'm working with, the kind of conversations like this, Chris, that I get to have. And so it was like I had this magical thread and I was just like following it and exploring and like peeking through like archways and doorways and just going, "Oh, would that be fun? Would I like to do that?" And I was just paying attention to the world around me and just seeing what was lighting me up. And I remember watching documentaries like Finding Joe and Choice Point, and they're still available and they're on YouTube, and they're goodies, but they're oldies. So
Good stories are good stories. Doesn't matter how old they are. Stories last the test of time. How do you view rest within your version of leadership? Whether you're working for a company or you own your own company, how do you rest? There's this concept in Christianity called taking the Sabbath day. It's every seventh day you rest from work. And I know for a fact, like I don't practice that, and I know most people don't either. But the thing is, if you think about all the people that you've talked to, I mean, this is at least true for me. I don't know of a single person when they go and take a break for a day or two or three, or heck, even longer than that, come back and say, "Man, I really wish I didn't do that. I really wish I didn't unplug. I really wish I did not take a break from all of the grind that life is," every so often, and come back rejuvenated. Now, obviously, people have told me that they come back to a pile of work and things like that, but in general, I haven't heard anybody complain about being restful. And I'm actually reading a book right now called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, which was actually not prompted by the recording of this podcast. I was reading it before that. And in it, there is a quote of another book, actually. So it's quoted inside of a quote. I'm quoting a quote in a book, of a book called A Guide to the Good Life, by William Irvine. I want to read this whole segment here. "There's a danger that you will mislive. that despite all your activity, despite all the pleasant diversions you might have enjoyed while alive, you will end up living a bad life. There is, in other words, a danger that when you are on your deathbed, you will look back and realize that you wasted your one chance at living. Instead of spending your life pursuing something genuinely valuable, you squandered it because you allowed yourself to be distracted by the various baubles life has to offer. How do you define success? Is it by top-line revenue? Is it by sales that close? Is it about your marketing metrics? Is it about a job title? Or is it about something bigger? Because a bigger impact does not have to equal a bigger paycheck, longer hours, and a crazier schedule. Success could look like being a lot slower than that. That's what Rachael got me thinking.